Over the last 3 years, I've spent 7 days a week with Steve. One of the principles I love from working with Steve is that we are like obsessed about the data. If I was starting as a content creator today, I would start with these 3 principles. Nothing else is relevant. Not the camera, not the topic, like nothing else. Just focus on these 3 things, please.
I want you to break everything down in terms of YouTube.
Yeah, the biggest mistake I see people make with packaging is assuming that it doesn't matter. When something is performing well, ask why. A conversation I had with Colin and Samir, and they have this really interesting concept of memorable views, forgettable views, and regrettable views.
Will, take me behind the scenes of a podcast shoot with Steven.
Interesting.
Hey there, it's me again. And this is a very special podcast because today we are talking to Will Perez, the lead filmmaker for Steven Bartlett, the man behind Diary of a CEO podcast. In this special podcast, he told me everything and broke down these 3 things. Number 1, how you can make money as a creative in the YouTube space. Number 2, how can someone grow a YouTube channel from 0 to 4 lakh in just a span of 3 years? And number 3, how entrepreneurs today handle and carry themselves. Before we begin, I would love for you if you could share this video with just one person in your network whom you think can benefit from this episode. Like, subscribe, and let's roll the video. Before we begin, I would love for you to tell the audience who you are and what's your story. Why should people watch today's episode?
My name's Will Perez. I am Steven Bartlett's lead filmmaker and editor, which means I've spent the last 3 years working 7 days a week with Steven, traveling the world, filming, photographing, and building a YouTube channel called Behind the Diary. So what that's meant I've done over the last 3 years is learn a ton about 3 things: entrepreneurship, YouTube, and storytelling. And I think for anyone at home, I really want this conversation to be a deep dive into each one of those branches so that you can understand, how do the best entrepreneurs in the world think? What is stopping you as a creative from taking the risk or earning more money? And then the third thing is storytelling. Why is storytelling important? From the investment meeting you might take to how you speak to your friends and your loved ones. I really want to focus on those 3 topics today.
Awesome. I feel the next 90 minutes are going to be very value packed for my audience because people following me are people who are creatives. These people want to make most of their passion. They want to explore their creative side and want to, make money with their creative fields, creative interests. So I would love for you to tell the audience, basically, with your passion as a photographer, how did you turn that into a full-time working gig for you?
It started with a lot of fear, and this might resonate with your audience, but I was 16 years old and I was the youngest kid in a family of 4. So I had 3 older sisters. Now, my oldest sister went to Oxford and studied medicine. My second oldest sister went to Cambridge and studied history of art. And my third oldest sister went to Harvard. And there's me at 16 years old with this camera in my hand saying, this is it. This is it for me. I don't want to work a 9 to 5. I don't want to be at a desk. I have to make this photography thing work. And that started with a lot of fear. So if anyone is in that position today, I understand, but I'd like to, in these 90 minutes, explain how I went from there at 16 to launching a business at 18 to becoming Steven Bartlett's filmmaker at 21. The story really starts at 16 in a classroom. I was at the back of it, and I don't know what everyone else was doing during school, but I was editing on my phone. So I was adjusting tone curves and split toning and denoising some images when I heard a noise from across the room, and it was, "Will, what are you doing?" And I kind of sheepishly looked up, and the teacher, Mr. Williams at the time, was staring directly at me, and then he looked down at my phone. He said, "Come back at the end of the class and put your phone at the front of the desk." So I did, and the end of the lesson rolled around, and I walked to the front of the class, and I walked down the classroom sheepishly with my tail between my legs, and I looked down at his feet, and then up at him, and then down to my phone that was in his hand. And I kind of stood there in this anticipated silence. Maybe a detention, maybe a phone call home, I wasn't really sure. But it was none of that. Mr. Williams turned my phone around to me and he said, "Will, who took this photograph? And I kind of sat there in disbelief, like, what is he on about? And I said, me, sir. I was just at the zoo last weekend. I've just stole my dad's camera. I was messing around with some buttons, and I just took the photograph. He said, okay. Well, here's what we're going to do. You're going to spend the next week doing these 3 photography challenges. You're going to experiment with this, you're going to shoot this, and you're going to come back to me with the images, and we're going to talk about them. How does that sound? Perfect, good, off you go. Don't text in class again. Now, I walked out of this classroom without a detention, first of all, by some miracle. But more importantly, I walked out of this classroom with what I now can see was the first seed of my photography and creative journey. Because what Mr. Williams gave me that day was the chance to try something, the chance to fail. And I spent the next 3 years just experimenting with photography. I would honestly shoot anything and everything. So from 16 years old to 18 years old, I became the school portrait photographer. I became my local wedding photographer. I became the bakery's photographer. I was just doing anything and everything I could to develop as a creative. And the reason I think that's important for anyone who's starting is that often when we start, we don't know how and we don't know when, and we wait for permission. But one of the things that I've learned looking back at this time is that really this whole period in my life was about collecting evidence. Evidence that I can and evidence that I could not in other areas. You see, so many of us don't start because we don't think we are. It's not in our beliefs that we're a creative, but you need to understand the theory of self-perception, which scientists have studied. And it suggests that we don't know who we are by what we think. We know who we are by what we do. So if you don't think you're a creative, ask yourself what you're doing about it. It's no good thinking about being a creative one day. It's no good thinking about becoming a sports person. You need to collect evidence, because belief is really just the receipt to evidence you've collected. So from 16 to 18, for me, it was shoot, gain a ton of evidence.
Honestly, the way you answered this just shows your love for storytelling. So I want to know, like, if we can use this previous answer of yours to drill down into some concepts of storytelling, that how you can tell a better story, how you can tell a good story.
Yeah, so to give you some context on where my love for storytelling comes from, I should probably explain some of the work I'm doing now with Steven. So we've built Behind the Diary, which was a YouTube channel for entrepreneurs that documents an entrepreneur. And we are essentially the blueprint for modern ambition. If you are someone who wants to do something, we've spent the last 3 years building a YouTube channel that shows you how, not by telling you how to do it, but by watching Steve, an immense entrepreneur himself, do it in real time. And in doing that, we've grown the channel to 410,000 subscribers. We've done over 13 million views online in 50 episodes. We've built the team to 7 people now. And in that journey, I have seen my storytelling go from storytelling to story selling. Now, let me explain. There's 3 principles for me in storytelling that are super important, and this is the first one. We think of storytelling as A to B, right? So you might say, I left the house, I walked down the road, and I went to the shop. You basically tell the person what has happened, but you need to become a story seller. You need to sell the story to your audience. To understand this, okay, let's put a suit jacket on. Let's put some nice trousers on, let's put some shiny shoes, and let's become a real estate agent for a second. Imagine you're selling a house to me. What would you do? Would you walk into the house and say, okay, here's my list. There's a bathroom, there's a kitchen, there's a library over there, there's some underfloor heating, and there's 2 bedrooms upstairs. I'd be out the door. I wouldn't want to buy that house. A real estate agent sells you a story about the property. They walk you in through the drive. And as you're walking down, they say, actually, this oak tree on the left is made with some of the oldest oak in the country. And your father's he knows that your father's a carpenter. So he's going to tell you about that, and he's going to walk you through the drive. You get in, and he's going to say, listen, it's so quiet. You can't hear a pin drop. And then he's going to take you through the kitchen really quickly. He's going to take you to the library, to the games room, to the cellar, to the cinema room. He's going to fire you around, and just as you get to the bedroom, he's going to say, listen, you can't hear a thing. Because a real estate agent understands that they are not telling you what's in this house. They are selling you what's in this house. And selling is a very, very different approach. You have to take people on this roller coaster of emotion. You have to speed them up. You have to slow them down. You have to give them the context that's relevant. Your job as a story seller is to think, how do I tap into this person's psychology and make them pursue the action that I want them to take? This doesn't just apply to real estate agents. Understand that whether you're asking your boss for a raise, whether you're doing a carousel on Instagram, you need to stop thinking A to B, and you need to plot your story as this emotional roller coaster that appeals to your audience's psychology. That's the first principle. You need to become a story seller, not a storyteller. The second, and this is perhaps the biggest thing that I think kills storytelling, is assumption. Assuming, okay? You see, over the last 3 years, I've spent 7 days a week with Steve, and we will go from investment meetings to travel to being on stage to really, really high profile podcast recordings. And my job as a storyteller there is to be a fly on the wall. So I'm just observing. And what I've noticed is that observation is the key to good storytelling. If you're not noticing, you're not picking up anything interesting. And I learned this from Pete Souza, who was Barack Obama's photographer for over 8 years. He shot over 8 million images with Barack Obama. And he has this quote, which I absolutely love. He says, "I never knew when history was about to unfold." Interesting. That's why so many of his images of Barack Obama are so intimate and so different, because he was so observational. He was always locked in on his subject and ready to photograph. Let me bring this back to the point on assumption. Assumption kills your imagery and your storytelling, because if you're assuming, you're not observing. If you walk into your story and you say, okay, I think I know what this is about, I know how my subject's feeling, I'm actually looking for this thing, then you stop observing. Every single time I would walk into a room with Steve, or every single time I think about a story, I'm asking myself the fundamental questions. What is happening? What context has led me to this moment today? Are there any small tells in my subject that might reveal something about them? What does the person who's watching this want to get from this? What does their life look like? What problems are they struggling with? You see, if you walk into a scene, a carousel post, a pitch, a conversation with your partner with all these questions in mind, you open yourself up to observe. And the best storytelling starts when you stop assuming that you know your subject. You stop assuming that your audience care. The third principle is just you need to increase you need to swing to more branches. So I think a lot of people fail with their storytelling because they basically have tunnel vision on. And they're looking at their story with one lens and they're saying, okay, this is what my story has to be. What I mean by swing to more branches is that you need to connect more dots in your life. So if you are someone who is an entrepreneur and you're trying to be creative, swing to other branches in other fields and expand your mind's potential to think creatively. You might go to a concert. You might start listening to different music. You might start reading poetry. You might start actually taking dance classes. And what you learn from there will be a branch that you swing into as a creative elsewhere. So I think some of the best creatives that I've worked with, even, for example, Steve, have a real understanding that creativity and good storytelling comes from understanding a variety of fields. So if you want to be a really good storyteller as a writer, you can probably pick up good principles from the dance world or from the theatre world, and that rich kind of context informs your storytelling. Those three for me are super important, and I use them day to day in my work.
Actually, what brought my attention to your Instagram page for your carousels? The detail, the colors, the crispness of the photographs. So basically, how do you think about the carousels, and how do you make sure that you're keeping a balance between the value as well as your creative satisfaction?
Interesting. No one's asked me that question before. It's probably, I'd say, 70-30. If I had to split it up in terms of importance, 70% of this is the value for the audience and 30% is the creative. And I think a lot of people get this mistake wrong, where they make a beautiful piece. It's an incredible collage, and then you put it on a mobile and you have no idea what's happening. So I basically start this whole story by trying to summarize a carousel into a sentence. So, for example, I did a carousel about the fact that Steve can work in any environment and he actually has immense focus. And so many entrepreneurs are stuck because they think they need the perfect desk, the red light glasses, they need the really nice keyboard and the fancy mouse. But I've watched this entrepreneur work from the back of a taxi and close deals and hire people from all over the world. So I took that idea and I try and summarize it into one sentence. This is like your North Star. Every decision you make comes back to that. The next step I'll then take is think about the first slide, which is really, really important. I want to use an image where someone's face is clearly visible and it shows some kind of emotion. We've seen in YouTube that, that window, the shop window, and how you frame that can really impact CTR. So I was kind of taking some principles across from there. And then the other most important thing is the hook. It sounds really basic, but the way I think about this is try and write something that is broad appeal. It applies to lots and lots of people. It is specific and it's emotional. So you could say, how I save time as a hook. Or you could say, this $6 Notion template has saved me 3 hours every single week, which means I can now see my partner. And if you're someone who's scrolling and that's the first thing you see, the brain is kind of tuned in to like focus on that and understand it. And then as a result, you'd want to scroll. So for me, I start with the sentence, then I go to the hook. And then I'm really just trying to make sure that the audience have the context throughout the story. Again, back to the point on assumption, it's so easy to think that people know who you are, know what's happening, and have some reason to care. So you'll notice in a lot of these carousels, a lot of what I'm doing is exposition. It's telling the audience, here's where we are, here's what's happened. I'm laying the foundations so that when they get to the punchline, it's like, okay. I think you can think of carousels as every slide should be and yes, and yes, and yes, punchline. So start with the hook. Okay, this first slide, context. Okay, and yes. The next slide, and yes, and yes, and yes, and then you get to the punchline and it sells the whole thing. So that's some of the ways I think about good storytelling carousels if you think these are valuable.
So in your 3 years of working with Steven, what things have you picked up from Steven? How does he operate? How does he work? If I ask you, like, what are 3 life traits you have picked up from Steven?
I'm going to split these into 3 categories.
For sure.
The first is about time. The second is about people. And then the third one's a bit more personal. Specifically on time, Steve has a unique understanding that his most valuable asset is the allocation of his time. And I see him use a variety of principles to make sure that he's putting his time in the right places. He's being effective with his time. The first one I love that he uses so often is this concept of signal versus noise. And this comes from something that Steve Jobs used to incorporate in his lifestyle, where he differentiates between the signal, which is time spent that really drives the mission forward. It's the thing that only you can do as a founder, and the noise. It's Shannon from HR emailing you, asking you if you can send her images from her birthday party last week because she really wants to send them to her nephew. That's noise. Steve is really, really, really well trained at focusing only on the signal, allocating his calendar so that he can really say, is what I'm working on today contributing towards the mission in a meaningful way? Everything else is either delegated or deleted. Another thing I've observed in terms of time is that CEOs and entrepreneurs don't waste any time in the middle.
Okay.
They understand that their time is best spent in 2 places: the biggest possible decisions and the smallest. You see, entrepreneurs operate slightly different to us because they work on the macro, the business decisions, where are we going, the strategic, the innovation. And I've seen Steve do all of that. That is his 20%, that's his signal. But they also understand that the biggest, most powerful thing they can do is walk through the office and check in on everyone individually. They can send that person the birthday text. They can say, hey, how was that meeting you had last week? How was your family? They understand that their power lies in the biggest decisions and the smallest, so they never waste time in the middle. And I'll tell you a story I love. We were on the business and life tour in Australia with Steve. And you'd think, okay, he's about to walk out on stage with 3,000 people. This is the first show. We've spent months preparing for it, okay? We've just done a meet and greet with 200 people. It was chaos. The show's 15 minutes late. Everyone in production is on high alert. And I'm there with a camera. I'm about to walk into Steve's changing room. I knock on the door. I don't hear a word. And I'm like, oh man, I need to, we're 15 minutes late. I need to go in and let him know that we're about to go out. So I just go in and I see him there in the corner speaking to himself. with a Sharpie in his hand. And I kind of didn't really know what to say. I walked around and I started taking some photographs. And what I saw was that he was writing the names of people he'd just met in the meet and greet and practicing incorporating them into his talk. Why? He's an entrepreneur. He has time. He surely has no time for things like this, but he understands that his power lies in the biggest decisions and the smallest ones. Remembering a fan's name and the story they told them in the meet and greet and incorporating it into his talk so that when he's on stage, he can call them personally and address it for them. That for me was so illuminating, because I think most people spend their time everywhere on the big things and then the small things, and then I need to do the middle stuff. Isolate it. What is the 20% that only you can offer? And then what is the smallest possible thing that you can change someone's life with? He does that really well. And then the third resource is just the fundamental understanding that one's allocation of one's time is the most important thing you can do. He understands that better than anybody. So those are kind of the principles I've learned with him on time. The second thing I've learned from him is around people. I think we look at entrepreneurs as these geniuses. These people who have got it all figured out. They have all the knowledge, they have all the capital, and they have something else that we don't even know what it is, but they must have it because we don't have it, so we're not successful. It's all wrong. What entrepreneurs understand that most people don't is that the game is just people. The game is attracting really good talent, selling them on the mission, combining them with a culture that makes them do exceptional work, and keeping them motivated. And this is something that I've learned through working next to Steve, is that he spends the majority of his time hiring. It's obsessive. Like 2, 3 a.m., we're in his inbox, he's looking for candidates. He gets so excited when he finds someone who is exceptional and can contribute to the mission. It's not a case of, okay, if there's the right job role, it's the case of, if this person's exceptional, we will find a way to plug them into the mission. And I think, as an everyday person, yourself, Sanskar, as well, like, we look at entrepreneurs as these miracle makers, but really what Steve does so well is that he's exceptional at finding extraordinary talent and then selling them into the mission and keeping them motivated. And then the third thing is just personally. I think Steve has an ability to push you further than you thought you could ever go and make you love it whilst doing it.
Okay.
You see, I think people come into this role with an expectation of their potential, and then within about 6 months to a year, they see that they've just completely exceeded it. And there's two types of people here. Audience, you might know which one you are. There's people who sit forward with their ego, and there's people who sit back, especially when you're working in high pressure situations. You see, I've observed creatives who, when they get demands, when they get pressure, when they get feedback, they lean back and they say, oh, well, actually, this was the reason I did it this way, and this feels a bit too much, so I'm not quite sure. And there's another type of person who, when feedback comes in, when a difficult conversation happens, when pressure comes on, they lean forward and they listen. And those are the type of people who I think in this environment thrive, because what I've observed is that feedback pressure isn't someone saying this is wrong. It's someone saying, hey, I think you can do better. Show me. And understanding that has meant that over the last 3 years of working with Steve, I thought I came into this job with an expectation of my potential. And he, time and time again, has just shown me that, like, hey, you can do way more than that. And if you just trust me, and if you listen to the direction we're going in, and you push hard for this mission, you'll see. And now I trust that. I'm like, okay, I don't even battle it. It's annoying because he's always right, But it's meant that I've watched the team around him really produce exceptional work, and I feel very lucky to be a part of that. That was a very long-winded answer to a very broad question, but I hope there was some value in it for you.
No, very good insight. Also, I would love to know, why do we see Steve always in a black t-shirt? Be it a podcast shoot, be it on Dragon's Den, be it on a tour.
It's interesting because I think everyone sees him in a black t-shirt, but Steve actually has a really, really good sense of style.
Okay.
Like whenever he's at award shows, and whenever the few moments that he does kind of have an event or something with his partner, he's actually a really, really smartly dressed guy. But I think it comes back to this principle on time of, where are you allocating your time? It's a case of, how many decisions can you remove so that your time is focused on the most important thing, which is the signal. For us as videographers, him wearing black all the time is fantastic because we don't have to think about intercutting scenes. Every single time we film with him, it's consistent.
Very
The
interesting.
lighting's the same. I tell myself he does it for us, but I'm sure it's because he wants to focus on the signal.
Will, how did you land your role with Steven?
I was 20 years old and I was at Edinburgh University and I'd followed the path that most creatives and probably most people watching have taken up until then. I'd gone to school, I didn't like the traditional roles, I'd focused on my hobby and then I went to university to pursue a creative career. And I got there and, as university is supposed to, it filled me with this immense inspiration. I was learning, I was enriched. That's not what happened at all. I was looking around in lectures saying, oh my God, we're all doomed. We're all doomed. Like, is this it? Is this what it means to have a creative career? We're going to be like these people? Surely there must be more. So I spent all of my university time and all of my time as an 18-year-old basically building a production company, which was called Lindsay Paris Productions. Every single hour I had, I was trying to get more shoots, do more freelance work, meet more people and network. And when I had time on the weekends, I'd do my university degree. Now, I was very fortunate that I could go to a great university, and I honestly, truly, truly loved it. But I definitely had that fear in me of what's next. So part of this process and part of taking on as many gigs as I could meant working for the CEO of a startup company called Conka, Conka. They're a nootropics brand. They're based in London, and I would spend 3 days a week in Edinburgh, 3 days a week in London, working for them for about 6 months. And the CEO was exceptional. He's an ultra marathon runner. And the first project we did was him saying, hey, I'm doing 14 marathons in 7 days. I'm doing a 200 kilo squat and a 200 kilo deadlift. You've been recommended to me by someone. Could you come and do the content for this? I was like, great, let's do it. Let's make it work. Came down to London, did that project with him for 14 days, and then started working. Now, by some miracle, Jack Sylvester, who was the co-founder and executive director of the Diary of a CEO, the guy who literally started it with Steve,
Yeah.
was a customer for this CEO. And on one of the calls, Humphrey was asking him, how's your week been? How are you using the product? What's working? And Jack was like, well, we've just let a videographer go. Steve's asking me to find a new videographer for this channel we want to launch called Behind the Diary. Like, I have no idea where to start. And Humphrey says, oh, you should take Will. So I get a text. This is April now, 2023. And I'm in the library, I'm pretending to study. It's about 9 a.m. in the morning. And I get a text from my boss, Humphrey, saying, hey, Will, I'm going to have to fire you. But I promise it's for a really, really good reason. You'll get a call from someone called Jack. He's the executive producer of the Diary of a CEO. The afternoon comes, I jump on the call with Jack. Jack tells me about this immense opportunity. We're looking for someone to follow Steve 7 days a week, film all over the world, document him as an entrepreneur, as a podcaster, as a public speaker, as an investor. We want to tell his entire story on a brand new channel called Behind the Diary. I was like, damn, this sounds ideal. Like, this is the opportunity I've been waiting for. I was a bit uncertain, but I had a feeling that I was going to be all in. Told him my story, felt like it kind of went well, but then at the end of the call, he said, okay, so whereabouts are you based? I was like, oh, I'm in Edinburgh. He was like, oh, damn it, Will, we're looking for someone in London. I said, okay, Jack, no worries, let me get back to you. So I hung up the call. And I left that call thinking, I've spent the last 3 years trying to get out of university, pitching projects. I tried to go to Gymshark, to AYBL. I got rejected at every single phase. And I was like, man, I've just blown it. So I spent 2 hours crafting Jack a text. I still have it to this day. It went along the lines of, hey, Jack, thank you so much for the call. I really appreciate your time, and I want you to know that this opportunity is far more important to me than my degree. I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I'm the guy who can do this. I would relocate to London next week, and we could start shooting that same week. Please know that my priority here is to get started and get moving. Let me know how that sounds. I hope to speak soon. And I was like, let's see. That was a Wednesday. The next Wednesday, I got the offer. By that Friday, I dropped out of university. And by the following Wednesday, I'd moved to London to start my role with Behind the Diary. So that's kind of how it happened. What does that mean for you? I'm still processing that moment where they reached out. It felt serendipitous. It felt like a miracle. But I look back at this now and I can understand that this is actually the product of, since being 16 years old, outreaching, networking, taking opportunities, doing the work with little understanding as to why. And I think for anyone who is like, oh man, he got his big break, I don't know. I think I look back at those years from when I was 16 and I was like, okay, I think I was just stacking up small pieces of evidence and evidence and evidence and evidence until this opportunity presented itself. So if anyone is out there who is a creative thinking, man, I just really want to work through, I want to work for this person, or I want to launch this business with this person specifically, ask yourself how much evidence you're collecting. Have you sent 500 emails? Have you done 500 freelance gigs for a birthday party that you didn't really want to shoot, but you kind of just hoped it would get somewhere? Because I have. I can show you the emails that I pitched to random brands, to Nike, to Adidas, to Gymshark, asking like, hey, I'll make this documentary, we'll do this thing, we'll make it work. And I look back on those now and I say, damn, they weren't failures, they were just the stepping stones to this miracle. So that's how I landed the role. But I'm sure do you know what? I say all of that. I'm also the luckiest guy on earth. Like, I can't deny it, because what is the chance, you know? Like, hindsight is a really manipulative thing, because I think you connect the dots backwards. But I remember in that moment being like, what's happened? Like, how am I here? You know, and I see the opportunity I have with this role, and yeah, it just baffles me. But in trying to make sense of it, that's what I've concluded.
With my next question here, I want to explain to the audience, especially who are creative videographers, how they can bring documentaries to life. So I want you to take me through the journey of ideation of Behind the Diary and to the execution. Like, what was your thought process, your raw diagrams, your mood boards, and from there, how did you bring that to life from episode 1 to episode 50?
Okay, so for context, with Behind the Diary, we shoot, 7 days a week. So we film every single moment with Steve, meetings, travel, everything. And then we sit down on a timeline and often find ourselves with 40 hours of footage. And from there, you say, first of all, you panic and you say, how on earth are we going to pull an episode from this? But over the last 3 years, I've started to refine a principle that has really helped me build Behind the Diary edits, but also can apply to your storytelling. When you're saying, okay, I've got this investor meeting, I've got this presentation, or I want to do this video with my niece, you can use these principles. So let's walk through them. There's 2 stages to story building. For the first one, you need a shovel. And for the second one, you need a toothbrush. Let me explain. The shovel is when you're taking this 40 hours of footage and you're just hacking at it. We call this our selects process. So we're chopping it down. Think of this as basically refining what is there. You're trying to lift out what you think are the best pieces. So if you're facing a big story, stop. Start to chop it down. Pull out the key points of value and start from there, okay? So that's your first stage. You've gone in with a shovel, you've dug out the parts that you really, really need. Now you get your toothbrush. And this is what we call sifting for gold, okay? Instead of now trying to chop and change, just refine the points. Try and make every single part of this story as tight as it can be. You should be able to point to every single part of your story and say, this clip right here is valuable because they're going to learn about hiring and culture, and this point right here is as short as it can be, but they're going to learn everything about how you can manage a long-distance relationship. So we are basically refining it with a toothbrush. And what you'll find as you iterate through this process is that you no longer have this terrifyingly massive story. You have 10 small, polished stories. And then you do the fun part, which is weaving it in and thinking like a story seller to say, okay, if I start with this, and then I take them to this part, and then these go back to back to back to back to back, and then I end with this emotional piece, then it starts to feel like a cohesive narrative.
What are your top lessons about YouTube storytelling? Because I'm sure you must find that for YouTube, to get some traction on YouTube, you have to move away from traditional storytelling concepts. So, like, is that true, or do you agree with me on this regard?
Yeah, I do. And we should probably question what we mean by traditional storytelling. Because for me, what makes storytelling traditional is actually the medium within which it's being consumed. So the reason why a lot of storytelling starts with a cinematic drone shot and a title scene credit and then like a 20-minute dialogue is because typically when people have sat down to watch these stories, they are in a cinema or they are on the TV screen. They're not 0.1 second away from a button that's going to take them to the home screen. So understand that traditional storytelling isn't correct storytelling. It's the product of that medium. Today's storytelling looks very different. People are 0.1 second away from the home screen, and they generally are so inundated with content that you need to be very clear as to why they should watch yours. One of the few ways you should think about storytelling on YouTube is through that lens, understanding that your audience member has no idea who you are, they have no idea why they should care, and they're 0.1 second away from clicking onto your competitor's video. This is actually why a lot of clickbait exists on YouTube, because it's just creators who understand that they need to appeal to your audience. Now, I'm not saying, go down the road and become a clickbait YouTube artist, but I'm saying respect your audience's time. Make it very clear to them what this is, okay? You need to think of YouTube storytelling as the title, the thumbnail, and then the first 10 seconds. Think of it like this is a bit niche, but let me try this. Think of it like you're booking a reservation at a restaurant, okay? You go restaurant, and then you go time, you go location, time, book, reserved. Your YouTube video is kind of similar, right? The steps from title to thumbnail to first 10 seconds should be cohesive. It should make sense. The title says, the $6 tool that saved me 3 hours. The thumbnail, if it's then a dog, I'm like, what? This doesn't make any sense. So when I'm thinking about storytelling, it should flow from the title to the thumbnail. I'm then seeing this blurred out image of the $6 tool. And then in the first 10 seconds, if we then suddenly go into a cinematic drone shot, we've broken the chain. I'm like, no. Title, thumbnail, okay, tick, first 10 seconds. This little tool has saved me more time than anything else I've ever experienced in my life. Let me show you how. Okay, we're starting to connect the dots. And more importantly, we're respecting the audience's time. So those are a few principles for me that have shifted how I think about storytelling, specifically to YouTube, because we are so focused with retention and making sure that we can keep our episodes engaging on BTD that's like the macro of how I think about it. Respect your audience's time, make sure you're making sense, and then, as I said at the start of this episode, like, don't assume they care, and don't assume they have context.
Well, I want you to break everything down in terms of YouTube.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the packaging, let's talk about retention, and let's talk about growth. When I say packaging, I want to talk about CTR. So with click-through rate, I feel personally that, okay, your title matters, thumbnail matters, but also the familiarity matters. That how quickly can the audience resonate with the thumbnail and can realize, okay, this video belongs to this particular channel.
The biggest mistake I see people make with packaging is assuming that it doesn't matter. Genuinely, like, I need you to understand that you should be spending 70% of your time not on your video, but on the title and thumbnail of your video. And one way that this was presented to me about 1.5 years ago was by people in my team, where we just finished making a fantastic video, and then we had less time than usual to start focusing on the packaging. And Steve said to me one day, he said, wouldn't it be a shame if in all the hours you've put in on this project, if in the detail you've just mastered over these edits and over these animations, wouldn't it be a shame if it went to waste because you chose the wrong title? You see, so many of us are guessing on YouTube, but we're working with an algorithm that understands that the title and thumbnail is the most important thing. Think of it like a shop window. You might have the most beautiful shop, but if the window's dirty, no one's going to walk in. So the first thing I'd say is that understand that titles and thumbnails and packaging of your episodes is the most important thing. I typically tend to think of it through the framework of, as I said earlier, like emotional, broad appeal, and specific. So specifically with titles, making sure that they're specific and that they lead to some curiosity gap. It's not, how I made $10 this year. It's this 3-minute morning routine that I do every Wednesday has made me $1,000 by the end of the day. It's specific. It's something that your brain has to listen to. And it has a bit of a curiosity gap. Emotional. It should be emotional in some way, not fluffy and how I made $10, how I made a disgusting amount of money this year. And then broad appeal. It should be a problem that everyone faces. So I think of specifically titles through that lens. And then the other part that I think we always forget about with YouTube packaging is alignment to the rest of the video. People typically will say, how can I make the most compelling package for this episode? But then it has nothing to do with like the first 90, the first 5 minutes, and the payoff in the video. So it's a very difficult challenge to balance this. But you should try and think of your package as one problem and then tie it to your episode to ensure it's aligned. Because as I said, if I went through the journey of time-saving problem, really engaging thumbnail, but then the video is about a dog, it's redundant. You should really try and tie in the promise and thumbnail to how it aligns with the episode. How do you think about it out of interest? What kind of principles are you thinking about as a YouTuber yourself?
So what I've realized, Will, particularly on my channel, on my podcast channel, what we have done is we have identified what our audience wants to click on. They have certain curiosities. Basically, they have, whenever we use a number, whenever we use a time frame, for example, somebody made X amount of money in Y amount of time, that works because that gives my audience an targeted outcome that, okay, if they watch this video, they will know how this particular person went about their job, spent Y amount of time and got X amount of money. Also, I've learned that obviously your colors, your facial expressions, those matter. But as I mentioned earlier, the familiarity. If I change the style of my thumbnail, audience drops off because they take some time to figure out that that video belongs to me. So the quickly I can tell the audience this video belongs to Sanskar Goyal, the quickly they'll click on it.
What I have just observed that is like super interesting is the skill that you have in knowing all this information. And I think it's probably, why you've achieved the success you have. It's because you understand that your game as a content creator isn't making the best content. It's not just that. It's understanding how that content is working in the back end. If you don't spend half of your time in YouTube Studio, stop publishing. It's redundant. Because you might get lucky, but what Sanskar's doing so well is he can tell you the specific principles that when he changed this color from red to blue, his audience didn't show up. And that mindset, that publish and process mindset is so critical. We're all so romantic as creatives. We think that we make the best stuff and as a result, 500 million people are going to understand. No. The person who wins here is the scientist, the one who can experiment their way and understand that when this font was used, 10% more people showed up. That's interesting. And then actually, if I change the color to blue, then this happens. You see, it's not guessing. What Sanskar's doing is observing what's happening in the back end, testing it through A/B testing. I just think it's such a unique skill. So congratulations, because I know so many people who, creators just generally tend not to guess. And one of the principles I love from working with Steve is that we are like obsessed, obsessed about the data and the back end.
Exactly what you mentioned. YouTube is all about data. If you are a creator and you don't want to be a starving artist, please get your grasp on data.
Yes.
Try to learn numbers and try to figure out the patterns. YouTube is all about pattern. Well, I'll be honest with you. There have been several videos where I have seen a concept and I have just literally, obviously tweaked it, but literally picked up that concept and similar packaging in my own style, obviously, and that has done very well as compared to the average videos on my channel. It's an outlier. Why? Because that thing was already working well on YouTube. I just picked that up, tweaked it to my style, and the result was there for everyone to see. So you have to figure out patterns, you have to learn data, and only then you can be a successful creator. If you're creating just for your personal creative satisfaction, by all means, go for it. But if you want to make money, If you want to make it a career, then you have to learn all the other aspects of this business, this game as well.
Honestly, preach. And I think if you're watching this at home, what does that mean? I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the audience. What does that mean? How do I go about and use these metrics day to day? I'd suggest three things. The first is that you need to notice what you notice. So when you're on these platforms, observe what you are seeing. When something is performing well, ask why, and then ask why again, and then ask why one more time, and then maybe you'll figure out that actually it's this title, or maybe this is a really interesting topic, or maybe this trend is really banging at the moment. So the first question is observe what you observe. The second is you need to get the data. So you're never going to learn these things from the sidelines. One thing that Sanskar's doing is publishing consistently. So every single time he publishes, even if the video doesn't do well, he's getting data. He's understanding what's working. So consistency and publishing is super, super important. And then the third is make it a part of your routine. Every single time you publish, you should be spending 2 hours after the video is live, observing what's happened, writing it down. 3 days after the videos went live, what happened? Why did this happen? What does this mean? And just spend more time in the analytics than your competitors. I think that's what I would do. If I was starting as a content creator today, I would start with these three principles. I wouldn't stray away from them. Nothing else is relevant. Not the camera, not the topic, like nothing else. Just focus on these three things, please.
I think the audience should take notes right now, because it never happens that both the guest and the host are just spitting facts about YouTube. So just take notes right now. One more thing that we do, Will, is that we track our 1 hour metrics post uploading a video, our 24-hour metrics, our 48-hour metrics, and our 7-day metrics. So we track the CTR, we track the AVD, we track the STV as well, subscribers to views ratio. On what number of views I got what amount of subscribers, because I feel that not every view is equal. If you're getting 100 views and you're not getting them to subscribe, there's something wrong with your content. Maybe you are delivering a false promise, maybe you are not able to deliver the value, and then you have to work on it. Also, one thing I've seen observed is that on YouTube, if you put out familiar content, similar content, that tends to do well. So let's say you're uploading twice a week, and both of those videos are on the same topic. So as you build on 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you will build up an audience that wants to watch that particular style of content. So it's important to stick to one niche when you are starting as a younger creator. If you are covering all the topics, one day you will have audience who wants to watch about cars. The other day it's about food. That won't sustain you in the longer run. So if you want to be successful, you also have to box yourself. It's very difficult as a creator to box yourself, because on the internet, everything is just pulling you towards itself. Come to me, watch this video, watch that video. But you have to be focused. You have to have that blinders on and box yourself and pick out a niche and just create 10, 15, 20 videos on it. Only then you will see some traction, some results.
I love that so much. I love the point you said about like not every view is the same. It made me think of a conversation I had with Colin and Samir, and they have this really interesting concept of memorable views, forgettable views, and regrettable views.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Right? And it speaks to understanding the type of numbers that you're getting on your content. Memorable views are like the YouTube video that you then go to the pub with your friends and you're like, did you see that? Did you see that episode? Oh my God, like that's memorable views. That can also be community events, memorable moments. Forgettable views is like, Sanskar, tell me the last reel you saw.
No idea.
No idea. And then regrettable views is, Sanskar, tell me what you were doing at 2 a.m. last night when you couldn't go to sleep. You were scrolling. Those are the views you regret. As a content creator, it's so important to understand the type of metrics you're optimizing for. Because yes, you might be getting 500 views, but if you're getting 100, 200 comments of people saying, this is insane, this has genuinely changed me, and on Monday morning, I'm going to use this principle in my meetings. That is a memorable view. It's worth its weight in gold. If you get 1 million views and then you scroll down to these YouTube videos that have like 20 comments, it hasn't driven people to engage. So I really think, yes, chase these metrics, understand them, but also put them in perspective, because they don't all have the same weight.
Will, take me behind the scenes of a podcast shoot with Steven.
It's quiet. You see, we are either in one of three places. We're in London, or we're in New York, or we're in Los Angeles. And the podcast race didn't start today. For the last month, there have been a research team of 7 to 9 people working on building out this research brief. They have spoken to the family of the guest, to the friends of the guest. They've gathered documents and photographs online. They have been in the trenches building out a detailed, data-driven research brief on this person. Meanwhile, production and guest booking have been arranging, getting them all the way across the world so that on this day, they can arrive into the studio on time. There has been so much work that the Diary of a CEO team put into getting a guest in front of Steve. And it is the bottom of the iceberg that no one sees. It's an immense, immense amount of work. So on the day, it's quiet. Everyone's focused. Everyone knows their roles. The guest production team are making sure that the guest is arriving on time, that they have everything they need. The research team have got their brief to Steve. Steve is in his room, he's focused, he's researching the guest. It's quiet. The guest arrives. The booking team greet the guest. We all say hello, we have a chat with them. They move through to the green room. Steve comes through and they have a fantastic chat. And often you'll find that this is the moment where everything clicks. And then they get into the podcast room. There's a little bit of preamble and then the episode just naturally flows. But one thing I love in these environments is that everyone knows their role and they just operate. It's like a perfect baton pass. You see like the world just assemble around Steve so that he can focus on the thing that only he can do, which is have the conversation with this guest, make them feel seen, make them feel heard, and make them feel respected. Everyone else is just operating around him. He's worked so hard and done so well to build out a team and system of people who can just like flow. I don't know how to describe it. Like if you were to understand what it looks like on the day, it's like this calm focus where people are just moving things into place. And that's what comes through like 4 or 5 years of the team working together. It's just this symbiotic relationship where one person passes to the next. Yeah, I really like those environments. It's a really unique place to be.
Also, how long does Steve shoot for?
It really varies. I couldn't comment on it personally because
Okay.
I'm not directly related to that side, but
Okay.
however long the conversation needs to be, but they can be long. They can be 3, 4 plus, you know, but I probably can't comment on it too well.
I feel, Will, that young people today who are creatives, who want to come into this field, have 2 fears. One is that they are not good enough. 2, they think there's not enough money. So I want to know from you, what would you tell a person in India, in a tier 1 city right now, who is sitting on the edge, is creative, wants to try out, but is fearful that if he tries out, there may not be enough money in this field?
Okay, let's separate these two because they're both very valid concerns. And as a creative who has been there and some days is still there, I still have that fear that I'm not good enough. Here's what helps me. I want to ask you, like, if you're listening to this, why do you not think you're good enough? Genuinely, that's not like a you are good enough, but why? Why do you think you're not good enough? What are you doing? Understand that. You see, bring it back to this point of the self-perception theory, that we think our beliefs come from what we tell ourselves and what we think. We think that I will be a good creative once I think I am better. If I just had more confidence, then I would buy the camera and start the YouTube channel. The brain doesn't work this way. Imagine your brain is watching you from the inside out. It's observing what you do, how you act, and the behaviors you run day to day. From that, it's then assigning your beliefs. So if you don't feel like you're a good creative, what is your brain watching you do? Is it watching you spend all day sat at a desk in a 9 to 5? Is it watching you spend all this time in the evening scrolling, looking at creative ideas? Okay, it's probably going to believe that you're really good at doom scrolling, not that you're a great creative. So if you have that fear that you're not good ask yourself, what have I done today? What is the one small step? I'm not saying today, launch the YouTube channel. I'm saying today, take the first step. Observe the metrics on your last Instagram post. Write down the script idea every single day. Stack this evidence. Because as I said earlier, belief is the receipt to evidence that you've collected about who you are in this world. It's not the other way around. You're not going to believe your way to creativity. You are going to collect evidence towards creativity. So every single day, take a small step. I genuinely believe that confidence is just the receipt. Confidence is the receipt for evidence you've collected. So take the small steps. There is no way. There is no other way. No one is born a creative. People just take more steps. I'm so passionate about this because I've felt that myself. And in terms of whether there's no money in the creative industry, look, I think you can just look at the macro trend that we're seeing with AI content. Like, content is becoming so easy to produce now. There's no barrier to entry. So like, yes, you could argue it's difficult to make money as a creative, but the cost of content creation's gone right down. So everyone has access to it now. There's no real excuse. I want to, on this point of making money as a creative, I think we should talk about the fact that to start with, sometimes you're going to work for free. It's a bit of a controversial topic, but like as a photographer, as a videographer, in order to gain this evidence, you're going to have to take gigs for free. You're going to have to do favors. You're going to have to start to gain this experience and this evidence off the back of someone saying, sure, you can show up and shoot for free. The value you're accruing there isn't physical. It's not money. It's evidence. It's that next step in your confidence building block towards feeling like a creative. But I don't know, I just think that it's a lie in the modern age that there's no money in creativity. Like, the media industry is warping towards content creators. We are seeing traditional media work with streamers. We are seeing traditional media launch YouTube channels. So if you don't feel like there's money in the content industry, but the biggest corporations in the world do, I mean, they must have something figured out. I mean, they're not just guessing here. So if they're pouring money into this industry, they must be chasing something. They must think there's a return. So ask yourself, do I think there's no money in the content industry? Or do I actually not just have enough evidence that I am a creative and I can pursue this for myself?
So, Will, now I'll ask you my one favorite question, which I ask
Okay.
to all of my guests. As somebody who's worked with Steven for the past 3 years, what has been the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
I have a friend called Barry, and this isn't a traditional answer, so stick with me. I have a friend called Barry who I met during COVID, and he's 81 years old. He lives with his wife, Sylvia, 3 doors down. He's always lived on my road, but I've never really met him. I've just known that he's down there. One day during COVID, I walked to his door and I said, look, well, maybe I can get them some food. Maybe they're in the house, maybe they need some groceries done. And I knocked on his door and this old man walked out. Grey hair, slightly hunched over, woolen jumper, but he has this warm, warm smile. And I said to him, this was back in 2020, Barry, it's good to see you. Would you like some groceries done? And he gave me a list. He was very thankful. And then he said, where are you going? You're in running gear. I said, yeah, I've just been to the gym. I've just gone for a little run. And he said, oh, how I'd love to walk and run. How I'd love to go out. Gosh, I wish. And I said, okay, let's do it. I'll be back here tomorrow at the same time. We're going to go for a walk, you and I. The next day comes around. Barry and I go for a walk. We walked 2 meters apart down these empty roads in the UK when it was allowed to kind of take a 30-minute walk. And we had one rule when we started: no limits. There was no limits to what we could speak about. We would be honest, we would be open, I would hear his stories, he would hear mine. And what has blossomed since then, from this one knock at the door, has been an immense friendship with a person who is 3 times my age, who has seen life 3 times over more than I have. But we have this immense friendship. When I went to university, we started writing letters, back and forth all the time. I made a film with him. He's immensely funny. He's an incredibly kind human being. And the one piece of advice he gave me came in the form of a book that I asked him for. For my 23rd birthday, I said, Barry, I want you to write me 23 lessons from life that you've learned from your time on it. And one of them sticks with me to this day. I'm going to get the book, so I'll show you. Where is it? It's going to be here somewhere. This is the book that Barry wrote me. And he called it Aphorisms. An aphorism is a concise statement which contains some teaching or principle. And he wrote me 23 of them. Lessons from his life that he's learned. And one of them, for me, just feels like the framework for how you should live your life. As someone who is ambitious, as someone who wants to create things, this is like the grounding rule. Let me find it. There's quite a few in here, so I'm just going to scroll through. Here we go. It's aphorism number 13, just up here. He quoted, "Think deeply, speak gently, love much, laugh often, work hard, give freely, and be kind." So simple. So simple. But coming from someone that I love so dearly and being so different to so much of like the infopreneurship that we consume today, it just hit me like a truck. It was like, maybe that's the whole point. Maybe that's actually all we really need to do to live a successful life, is to think deeply, give freely, be gentle, and be kind, and work hard. I don't know. It really touched me, yeah. So I'd share that with you, and I'd hope the audience takes something from that.
Be gentle, be kind, and work hard.
I'll say it again.
That's a good note.
I'll say it again. It is: think deeply, speak gently, love much, laugh often, work hard, give freely, and be kind. That is Barry's advice. I can't take it as mine. So if it doesn't work out for you, if it all fails, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
I think Barry's advice is a good note to end this conversation. Will, thank you so much. I loved every bit of it. Your passion for storytelling came right through, out from the screen to me, and I felt it to the T. Thank you so much, Will. Loved this conversation.
Sanskar, thank you. And to the audience, if you've made it this far and you're not asleep, thank you. Sanskar, you're immense. You're a really, really exceptional talent. And the questions you ask and the way you think about YouTube is, it's really unique, but it's like a contagious creativity. So congratulations, man. I feel really honored to be a part of your story.